Hi everyone, it's Julianne here and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you something other than a Christmas card. And for that, I'm going to be showing you how I created this bright and cheerful card using some products from ink to paper. For my card today, I'm going to be starting off by creating my background. And for that, I'm going to be using the Barnwood Planks die set from Honeybee Stamps. Now off camera, I used those Barnwood dies in order to cut multiple pieces of Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I ran both of those through my die cutting machine. I'm now going to be adding some color to each one of those planks using some of my Pink Fresh Studio inks. I'm going to be adding a base color of Ocean Breeze, and I'm going to be adding that color over each of those die cut pieces using some of my blender brushes. Once I've added that color, I'm then going to be coming in with a little bit darker shade, Aquamarine, and I'm going to be adding that color in order to add some shadows as well as some depth to each one of those die cut pieces, and I'm just going to be adding that color around the edges. I really wanted to create that barnwood look for this card, but I wanted to have some bright and vibrant colors for my card as well today, so I decided to go with this aqua color to give them some beachy vibes, because even though it's Christmas time, here in Florida, it is sunny as ever. So once I'm done adding that darker color of ink to each one of those die cut pieces, I'm just going to set those off to the side while I start working on the rest of my card. I'm going to start out by stamping the Blooms image from the Abundant Blooms stamp set onto some red colored cardstock. Now when it comes to die cuts that you can't see through them once you place those dies on top of your image, what I like to do is I like to do my die cutting first, and then I'll place my die cut piece back inside of my MISTI like you see here, and then I'll line up that image, which in this case is that Bloom stamp, and I'm going to line that stamp up back onto my die cut piece before I do any stamping. I find that this really helps me with getting a really good stamped / die cut image. So if you struggle with that as well when you have dies like this is a super easy fix. So back to the card. I'm going to be stamping that Blooms image onto some red colored cardstock like I mentioned before, and I'm going to be stamping that using some Versamark ink. And once I have that all stamped out, I'm then just going to be adding some Gina K Fine White embossing powder over my entire image, and then I'll be heat setting that powder using my heat tool. I'm now going to be stamping the smaller bloom images in that same Abundant Bloom stamp set. Now instead of stamping them in red, I really wanted to bring in some additional bright colors, so I'm going to be stamping each of those using a little bit of an ombre effect. I'm going to start out by first stamping them in the color Sunshine, and again, all of these inks are from Pink Fresh Studio. I'm then going to be coming in with a darker color, which is going to be Apricot. So I'm going to be stamping the images with that Sunshine first, and I'm going to stamp those down a few times. And then I'm going to come in with the Apricot, and I'm just going to be adding that ink onto the edges of those images. So that way, once I have that stamped out, it'll look as though the flower is yellow, but then it fades into that darker color, which is the Apricot. Now I know you can see that teal vase that I've already stamped out, but just ignore that. I thought I really wanted that vase to be the same color as my background, but I didn't end up liking it. So here I'm going to show you how I use those same layered stamp sets in order to stamp a gray vase. Now I'm going to start out by stamping the base layer of that vase using some Misty Coast. And I'm going to stamp that image a few times since this is a new stamp set for me, as well as a new ink pad. Once I've stamped it out a couple of times, I'm then going to line up the layered stamp, and that's going to add in the details to my vase. Now, I am just going to line that up using the image that I've already stamped out. And sorry, my head does kind of get in the way for just a little bit. But once I have that all lined up, I'm then just going to be stamping that image down using a little bit darker of a gray ink, and that's going to be Rocky Slope. And once I've stamped that a few times as well, you can see here just how easy it was to get that layered look for that vase. So once I had stamped out all of those images, I just placed them off to the side, and then I started working on my background. Now once all of those die cut pieces had dried from earlier, I really just didn't like the color. Not that I didn't like the color, I just wanted to make them just a little bit darker, so I had to turn to my expert, which just so happens to be my hubby, and he suggested that I add in some black, so that's what I did. I've pulled back out my Waffle Flower Media Mat, and I'm going to be adding in some black soot to each one of those die cut pieces, and I'm going to be adding that ink just to the edges like I did before. Now adding that color really just made that aqua color pop, so I am so happy that I listened to his suggestion. But if you liked the die cut pieces before I added in the black soot, you could definitely skip that and just keep them how they were from before. So once I finish adding in that color, I'm then going to start working on adhering all of them down to my card, and I'm going to be adhering them all using some liquid adhesive. Now when I'm adhering them down, I'm going to make sure that I scatter them on each row so that way they look like an actual barnwood wall. Now I'm just going to continue adhering each of those down as well as trimming off any excess that may be hanging off the side until I have my entire background covered. Now with my background all complete, I'm now going to start working on assembling everything together, and I'm going to be starting out by stamping out my sentiments. Now I used the Candy Swirl die set to die cut out some white cardstock, and I used that same Sunshine ink from earlier in order to ink blend the bottom of that die cut piece to add even more color to my card. I'm now going to be stamping a sentiment from both the Brighter Days stamp set as well as the Just Sentiments Get Well stamp set. And I'm going to be stamping both of those sentiments down to my circle die cut piece using some more of that Rocky Slope ink. And once I have both of those sentiments all stamped out, my sentiment is now going to read, "Wishing you brighter days ahead." Once I had my sentiment all stamped out, I did adhere that circle die cut piece directly down to my card using some foam adhesive to give my card that little bit of added dimension. Now I'm going to be adhering my vase along with the blooms down to my card as well. Now for the portion of my images that will sit on top of that circle die cut piece, I'll just be adhering those down using some liquid adhesive. But for the parts that are going to be hanging off that piece, I want it to be leveled with that circle die cut, so I'm going to be adding some foam adhesive behind those areas. With all of those adhered, I'm going to be adhering the yellow flowers that I stamped earlier, and I'm going to be adhering those down to the red blooms that I heat embossed. I'm going to be adhering those throughout that bloom image to make sure that I have a really nice even amount of color on my card. And I'm going to be adhering each of those down using some liquid adhesive. Now to finish off my card for today, I still wanted to add even more color, so I'm going to be scattering a bunch of the Honey Jar confetti mix sequins throughout my background. And once I have all of those adhered, that's going to complete my Brighter Days Ahead card. I just really love how bright and just how colorful this card came out, and I really hope that you like it as well. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, as well as subscribe to my channel for even more card making ideas. If you're interested in any of the supplies I used today, I will have them all listed and linked down below in the description box. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time, and happy crafting!